Hello, and welcome back to Learn My Heritage with me. I am your host, Mary Bennett, and this podcast is brought to you by the Hojo Path Renewal. I'm a Diné woman who is reclaiming what was interrupted one step at a time. Because of assimilation and general disruption, there are many of us out there that are finding our way back to the teachings that weren't fully passed down. This podcast is my own personal reclamation, spoken out loud so that it will root deeper within me. These teachings that I share are all publicly available. I'm not sharing ceremony. I'm not speaking for all Diné people. I will be weaving in some Diné Bazad, which is the Navajo language. I didn't grow up with it, so it won't be perfect. And that's part of this journey. Jo'ogo nash do. I'm walking in beauty. And if you're reconnecting too, you're in the right space. Let's begin. Welcome back to Learn My Heritage with me. My name is Mary Bennett. I am a Diné woman, and this podcast is a personal journey to reclamation. I am a Diné woman, and like many Indigenous people, I grew up away from and disconnected from parts of my heritage due to generations of forced assimilation and relocation from traditional teachings. So I'm here learning publicly, sharing what I discover, and speaking the teachings aloud so that they will root deeper within me. This is simply my journey to reconnect with my ancestors, and hopefully I inspire others to reconnect with theirs. And like I've said before, there will be Diné words in and throughout these episodes, and my pronunciation will not be perfect, and my understanding may not be perfect, but I do approach this journey with humility and respect. Today we're talking about something that many of us look at every night, but rarely stop to truly see. The stars. When I was younger, I was always drawn to the stars. There was something about them, about standing outside at night and looking up, that just felt different. The stars seemed to be bigger than just the sky. I was fascinated by the different constellations and the stories people attached to them, but I never fully knew the meaning. I knew some of their names, and I could point out some of the shapes, but I never stopped to ask why that truly mattered. What were our ancestors seeing when they looked up at the stars? What knowledge were they carrying? What lessons were written in the stars? Looking back now, I think a part of me was searching for something that I couldn't quite name. As a Diné woman that was raised away from the traditional teachings, there were pieces of my heritage that I knew existed, but I didn't always have access to them. The stars felt familiar, even when I didn't understand why. Maybe that's because they're one of the few things that connects all generations. The same stars that I looked at as a child are the same stars that my parents looked at, the same stars that my grandparents looked at. They're the same stars that all of our ancestors looked at for hundreds and thousands of years. They have witnessed generations of people. And as I began learning these teachings, I realized that our ancestors weren't simply looking at constellations. They were reading teachings. They were reading time. They were reading story. They were reading instructions on how to live in a relationship with the world and everything around them. The more I learned, the more I realized that the stars were never just something to admire, but they are teachings. And maybe that's why I've always felt drawn to them, even before I understood what they were trying to teach me. One of the last teachings I came across says that the Quartz People, Tsé Ghádi'nídínii, helped establish the patterns of the stars so that people could determine time, age, and the era. The stars were organized into seasonal patterns, and specific stars were assigned leadership responsibilities. So think about that. The stars weren't viewed as chaos, but they were viewed as order, as structure, as a system. And I believe that that's a theme that we have seen throughout this journey. The sacred mountains have purpose. The Hogan has purpose. The directions have purpose. The seasons have purpose. And now we're learning that the stars have purpose too. Today we have GPS. We have smartphones. We have clocks. We have weather apps, calendars, satellite imagery. We carry an incredible amount of information in the palm of our hand, in our pockets. But for thousands of years, our ancestors carried that knowledge somewhere else, in their mind and in the sky. Imagine standing outside at night, No lights, no city noise, no screens, no distractions. Just darkness and stars. When you live closely connected to the land, the stars become immensely important. They tell you when seasons are changing. They help guide travel. They help track time. And they signal when certain ceremony is approaching. The sky becomes a living book, and our ancestors knew how to read it. One thing that I've noticed about the Diné teachings is that very little is left to chance. Everything has relationship. Everything has meaning. Everything belongs. The stars weren't scattered. They were arranged. The seasons aren't random. They follow patterns. And maybe that's one of the reasons why our ancestors spent so much time observing the natural world. Because nature reveals order. And when we can understand that order, we can understand ourselves. The leading winter star has 5 points. Why 5? Because the Hogan has 5 points. The human being has 5 fingers. And I love this. Because it reminds us that the universe isn't separate from us. The same pattern appear again and again. The stars, the Hogan, the human body, all reflecting one another. It's almost as if the lesson is, look carefully. The answers are already surrounding you. So the summer stars in the cane pattern. This teaching explains that after the winter pattern of stars was established, the summer pattern, the stars were arranged in the shape of a cane. And that might seem like a small detail. However, think about what a cane represents. Guidance, support, and a pathway. Something that helps carry us forward. Because the stars themselves become symbols of movement and direction. One of the most important stars in the Diné teachings is Náhookŭs, which is often associated with the North Star. Unlike many that appear to move across the sky, Náhookŭs remains relatively still. Everything else seems to rotate around it. So that's just a single point that's stable, steady, and reliable. And everything else is moving around it. And that itself is a teaching, right? Because in life, everything changes around us. Jobs change, relationships change, finances change, and your health changes. The world changes. But if we have a strong center, if we remain grounded, just like Náhookŭs, the lesson is to remain grounded and stay constant while everything else moves around you. Many Diné teachings refer to Náhookŭs Bikŭ, the Revolving Male One, the celestial figure that helps organize movement in the heavens. And again, we see a pattern. Movement, order, relationship. Nothing's random. The stars follow pathways. The seasons follow pathways. Life follows pathways. And when we move too far from those pathways, we tend to feel it. We feel disconnected and lost, a bit anxious and overwhelmed. And maybe that's one reason why today we spend so much time searching for ourselves. We become so disconnected from the rhythms that once grounded human beings. And then here's part of the story that is one of my favorite teachings. One of my favorite indigenous character enters the story, the Coyote. The teaching tells us that after the stars had been carefully placed and organized, Coyote becomes impatient. He grabbed a reddish star and threw it northward, and then he gathered the remaining stars and just threw them across the sky. And this is the Diné teaching that explains the Milky Way. Now, whether or not you want to view this literally or figuratively or symbolically, that's really not the point. Because the lesson itself goes deeper. Because Coyote often represents impulsiveness, impatience, acting before thinking, disrupting order. And we've all had Coyote moments. Because how many times have we rushed into something, quit too early, spoken before thinking, made decisions with emotion instead of wisdom, wanted things to happen faster than they were meant to. All of that is Coyote energy. And what's fascinating about this teaching is that it suggests that even when order is disrupted, something beautiful can still emerge. The Milky Way is one of the most breathtaking sights in the night sky. And according to this teaching, it exists because of disruption. And that is a lesson we all can learn. Because some of our greatest wounds become some of our greatest teachers. Sometimes the most difficult changes become the beginning of a completely different story. And one thing that I've noticed, and I'm sure you have too, is how much all of these teachings come back to Hojo. Balance, harmony, relationship. Nothing exists alone. The mountains relate to directions. The directions relate to seasons. The seasons relate to animals. And the animals relate to people. And the stars relate to everything. The night sky isn't separate from us. It isn't separate from life. It is a part of life. And just as the body has structure, the earth has structure. The universe has structure. And by observing these structures, our ancestors learned how to maintain balance within themselves. And as I've learned more about our teachings, I've realized that forced assimilation didn't just separate the people from the language. It separated people from relationships. Relationship with land, relationship with community, relationship with ceremony, relationship with stars. For thousands of years, knowledge has been passed down through observation, stories, experience, connection. And when those systems are interrupted, people lost access to more than just information, but they lost access to identity. And while many of us are still finding our way back, not because we're broken, because parts of the pathway were interrupted. When I look at the story of Coyote scattering the stars, it reminds me of this disruption. Things were no longer where they had originally been placed. The patterns changed. The order changed. And yet the stars still remained, waiting to be remembered. This podcast is a way of helping rebuild that pathway for myself and maybe for others too. So most of us aren't using the stars to tell time anymore, but the lesson still applies. What patterns guide my life? What keeps me grounded? Am I living intentionally, or am I simply reacting? Where am I acting from wisdom? And where am I acting from Coyote? The stars remind us that life works best when we live with purpose. But they also remind us that when life gets messy, beauty can still emerge. And one of the reasons why I love this teaching is because it mirrors something that I teach in the Thrill of Success, my planner. The planner itself isn't about getting things done. It's about creating intentional patterns. The stars follow patterns. The seasons follow patterns. Our ancestors followed patterns. And success follows patterns too, repeated consistently over time. And just like the stars moving across the sky, every single day we have the opportunity to decide whether we're going to be drifting through it or intentionally creating our life. The stars teach us direction. The planner helps create direction. Both invite us to move with purpose, not drift through life. As we close, I want to leave you with a few questions. What is your North Star? What keeps you grounded when life becomes chaotic? What value remains steady no matter what changes around you? Where in your life are you following a meaningful pattern? And where might you be operating from Coyote? And most importantly, when was the last time you walked outside and looked up? Not to take a photo, not to post it, but just to observe it. Just to remember that you are a part of something bigger than yourself. Yeah. Thank you for spending time with me. And if you enjoy this episode, please leave a review, leave a comment, and share it with someone who might be reconnecting to their heritage. You can support this work through the Hojo Path Renewal Foundation and follow along as we continue this journey of learning, remembering, and returning. You can find Hojo Path Renewal at hojopathrenewal.org, and that is HOZHO pathrenewal.org. Until next time, walk in beauty. Hajogo Naja Do. I walk in beauty. Thank you. Thank you for being here with me today and walking this path, this journey. If this resonates with you, please leave a comment and share your thoughts. I hope that you continue to walk this journey with me. Make sure that you like, follow, and subscribe to make sure that you stay in tune with all the latest episodes. And if you feel called, share this with someone who is also reconnecting to themselves and to their roots. Hajogo Nash Do. I walk in beauty. I'll see you next episode.